I came home and they're all dead.
Whereabouts are you?
Every Street.
Every Street?
65 Every Street. They're all dead.
Who's all dead?
My family, they're all dead. Hurry up.
It's okay. Every Street. It runs off Somerville Street?
Yes.
What number are you calling from?
454.
454
2527.
2527. And your last name?
Bain.
Bain. Okay. We're on our way. Okay, Mr. Bain? Yeah, we'll be there very shortly.
Now I'm going to play a piece of audio that was edited out of the original 111 call. It sounds like he's saying something, but is he? Really listen. Some people think he's saying, I shot the prick. But what I'm hearing is, I killed the prick. What do you guys think? Let me know. From what I've read, Robin and David, they didn't have a really good relationship. And Robin actually favoured his daughter, Laniet. So why would Robin type up a note saying that David was basically the only one who deserved to live? Also, I read that Robin wasn't the best with technology, so why would he choose to type a note? Wouldn't an old school fellow like Robin write the note? This is the 90s. Unless, of course, it wasn't Robin who did this, and instead it was David, and he was trying to frame his dad. David hasn't spoken very nicely about his father after all this or before. So I can see it being possible that David killed his family and framed his dad. Additionally, the bloody fingerprints on the rifle were found to be a match for David. So as the investigators continued their search in the Bain family home, they focused their attention on the bedroom of 14-year-old Stephen, where he was killed. There were signs of a struggle. And Stephen's room was super messy, as well as the whole house. And Stephen, he had fought for his life. But doesn't this seem a bit off to you? Really think on it. Considering his dad, Robin, was an older man, he was small, he was frail. If Robin had been the shooter, one would expect that Stephen, being so young, would overpower him. Stephen had been strangled with, it was either a pillowcase or a t-shirt, I'm not sure, and he was almost scalped before he was shot. Also inside Stephen's bedroom, investigators found a lens from a pair of glasses, and the glasses were found in David's bedroom on a chair, which raised suspicions. Looks like David may have been the attacker, right? And the glasses broke in the scuffle. And this is when detectives began to question whether David was actually the person who killed his family. Also, inside Stephen's bedroom, investigators discovered a pair of white gloves. Now, these gloves were soaked with blood, and they were underneath his bed. I'll put a picture up. The investigators believed that the gloves were worn by the killer. They believe that the shooter removed the gloves in order to fix the jammed rifle. Apparently this rifle jammed quite often, and then the gloves basically got lost underneath the bed during the scuffle. These gloves were reportedly taken from a drawer that was in David's bedroom. This discovery raised several questions among the investigators. They wondered why Robin would have decided to use David's gloves instead of his own during the shooting, if indeed Robin was the shooter. Additionally, if Robin had planned to take his own life after committing the killings, why were gloves needed at all? There would have been no reason for him to cover up his fingerprints, right? Why would he try and hide it? When the detectives questioned David, he claimed that when he went into Laniet's room after he got back from his paper run and did his laundry and whatnot, he found her and that he heard gurgling noises coming from her. Now that... However, the medical examiner determined that Laniet would have died instantly after the second or third shot to her head, which means in order for David Bain to have heard his sister gurgling, he would have had to have been present when she took her final breaths, meaning that he was likely to be the killer or be with the killer. Think on it.
How would describe your immediate family as dysfunctional?
Yes, I do.
And was that a fair description?
It was, absolutely. And I'm quite happy to admit to that now. At the time I didn't see it as dysfunction, because that's just the normal thing. I lived in that household, we were a very tight group, and I just considered it to be how life was led, or how we lived life. I didn't see it any other as being out of the
You
ordinary.
had nothing to compare it with.
Exactly.
Late on the Thursday afternoon, a police officer whom I knew fairly well came over to me and said, "Graham, we're giving you a little warning. We don't want you to be upset. David will be arrested and charged tomorrow. We've got all the evidence now. He has done it. We know that. We've always known it, but we had to prove it." I said, "Oh, fair enough." And I thought about it for a while and thought, "Oh, shit, my son's going to be really upset about this," because at this point in time, he still doesn't know. And he hasn't seen David. We went up to the Clark household that night and we walked into a room similar to this one. And David walked straight up and he walked into my face. And I couldn't actually see him. He was above me with his eyes. And I, this is stupid. He wasn't hugging me, he was standing there talking. So I backed off him and he walked straight in on me again. So I did the unusual thing of stepping backwards but stepping up onto the couch and standing on it. And he just turned around and he went straight over to my son. And he stood in front of him. So my son sat on the chair there. David then went and sat on that chair there and he focused his eyes on that wall down there. And not once while he spoke to us, and we were in that house for well more than half an hour with him, did he look at either of us. He just kept talking to the wall and saying nothing really. So I decided that we'd been there long enough, I think it was. Said we had to go. So he gives us a bit of a hug each as we got to the front door. And I said to him I'd see him at the funeral. And he said, "Oh, you're going to the funeral?" I said, "Yes." "You're all going?" I said, "Yes, we are." "Oh, that's good." I said, "Well, what would you expect, David? We're there to support you." He says, "Oh, I won't be there." And I looked at him and said, "What do you mean you won't be there?" "Oh, you know." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You know." "Oh, well, we'll see you." And I left it at that. And we got home and my son went straight into his room and shut the door behind himself. And he let out a bit of an oath. And my wife went in to see how he was, and he was sitting in his room crying. And he said to his mother, "He did that, Mum. The bastard's killed his family." And the discussion that we'd had and the way he treated us was enough for Shane to realise what his mate had done. Although I'd been forewarned that he was coming, I became somewhat emotional and I got sent home. I was just having difficulty with the whole situation. I knew the boy. And I guess reality was starting to set in. I knew in my own mind what he'd done. I went home that day. I went back to work the next day. And I actually spoke with David that second day I went in, and I gave him a little caution to keep his mouth shut and say nothing, that anything he did say that prison staff heard, they would pass on to the police. He just relaxed into the place. It was like he lived there. He did a few stupid things. He kept having fits. every time he had one, if the nurse was there, the nurse would be called, or if he wasn't, they'd phone for the doctor. And I said to the bosses that I'd known David for a long time, and I'd never known David to have fits, and that indeed they should notify me when he had one if I was on duty and get me to go down and see him, and they could come with me. And that did happen. I threw the door open, I walked straight in, and David's on the floor having his fit. And I said, "David, what the hell do you think you're doing?" And he stopped. Just midstream, stopped dead. "Oh, I didn't know you were on duty today, Graham." I said, "Don't have fits, David. Cut it out." I said, "That's the end, no more." And there wasn't. That was the end of his fits. Didn't need a doctor, didn't need a nurse or anything else. Just needed to be told in front of staff he didn't have fits.